Number 8. Military bases in Antarctica. During World War II, rumors swirled around about the existence of a secret Nazi base in Antarctica. During the Nuremberg trials held in Germany to bring Nazi war criminals to justice, evidence emerged that there was a possible base in Antarctica. When the naval admiral, who eventually became the president of Germany, spoke about the existence of what he described as an invulnerable fortress in the middle of eternal ice. But is it possible that not only was there a secret Nazi military base, but that it housed secret UFO technology? In the 1950s, when UFO sightings were at their height, gossip circulated that Germans had created powerful super weapons that were developed and tested during the Third Reich. When Germany surrendered in 1945, the technology was supposedly shipped to Antarctica. As more extraterrestrial sightings were reported, they were blamed on a hidden Nazi presence in the remote location. The story of secret underground bunkers in Antarctica came from a real expedition that visited the continent between 1930 and 1939. German operatives explored and mapped the area, uncovering multiple underground caves and rivers. Because one of the caves was particularly large, rumors swirled that the Nazis had built a large city. Somehow, along the way, another story surfaced that said the Germans came across alien technology during these Antarctic expeditions that they studied and used it to build a number of weapons. As later research was done on records, experts found no mention that any base had been established during the expedition in the late 1930s. Because the research team was only off the Antarctic coast for a month, the ability to build the base in that time would have been impossible. Further study found that instead of sending a large-scale expedition with militarized and scientific ships, the Germans actually only sent one small ship in an effort to find new territory where they could expand their whaling industry. Also, because the boat was so small, the crew manning the ship would not have been large enough to carry the supplies needed to build a massive hidden base. It's easy to believe wild theories such as this because of the remote location and hazardous conditions in Antarctica that make it one of the least explored places on Earth. Number 7. Nazi tunnels. For more than 2 decades, there have been whispers around the Denver International Airport that some unusual architecture and strange murals may hide the truth that the Nazis once had secret bunkers beneath the airport. Ever since the airport was built in 1955, various news reports on media outlets spoke about the theory that the Nazis had planned to launch their New World Order takeover from the Denver airport. So how did these rumors get started? The first piece of the puzzle comes from the coordinates for the alien landing site in the 1977 film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Apparently, the coordinates for the alien landing in the film point to the location of the Denver International Airport. In one of the terminals, a plaque dedicated to the Freemasons, along with their unique symbol and unexplained markings, have led some to believe it is a secret language taught to them by an alien race. For decades, the Freemasons have been accused of having a hand in ongoing control over religious, political, and cultural events. Could they have a connection to the rumors of the underground bunkers? And how did those rumors get started? Apparently, beneath the airport's underground baggage transport tunnel, there's a large hidden shelter that even contractors who were working on the original airport saw evidence of. Secret entrances and unexplained tunnels contribute to the belief that they could be hiding something sinister. Another theory that the Nazis had a hand in its construction comes from the design of the runways at the airport. They may look normal to the average observer, but when viewed from above, they look like a swastika, leading people to believe that it was a concealed way of showing that fascism was on the rise in the area. Why would the Nazis make it so obvious and not hide their influence if they really were trying to launch a secret takeover of the United States? People will see what they want to see and believe what they want to believe. Number 6. Roswell, New Mexico. The incident in Roswell, New Mexico, the report of a crashed unidentified flying object, is one of the most well-known conspiracy theories around the world. But are there still secrets to the Roswell incident that we don't know about? The original theory is that an alien spacecraft crash-landed in the New Mexico desert. A story started to circulate of a downed flying disc after unusual debris was found on a ranch 30 miles north of Roswell. Newspapers quickly picked up the headline that the Royal Air Force had captured a flying saucer on the ranch. In the years that followed, UFO enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists continued to build upon the story, saying an autopsy had been performed on the alien in the mid-1990s. But more theories surrounding the supposed crash circulated during the rise of the Nazis in Germany. During this time, some people believed that the flying object that crashed in New Mexico was part of a project to test Nazi flying machine technology. Could this be because German scientists and doctors were shipped across the Pacific in an operation known as Operation Paperclip, where the US brought German scientists to America to harness their brainpower for the Cold War initiative? The original story told by the government officials was that it was a US Air Force balloon that fell to Earth that day. But some believe it was a spaceship hit by lightning that crashed. Two authors who insisted they interviewed more than 90 witnesses after the event believe that it was a government cover-up and that the ship crashed, killing the unknown creatures on board. A retired special agent for the US claimed that aliens landed at Roswell and that inside the ship there were survivors. Other witnesses have come forward to claim that there was a huge battle after the ship crashed between the US Special Forces and the extraterrestrials, where 60 troops and local residents were killed in a firefight between aliens. Maybe it's because there is no definitive evidence over what the spacecraft actually was that people continue to theorize about what crash landed in the New Mexico desert so many years ago. What do you think? Do you think it was an alien craft or simply a weather balloon? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 5. Royal family ties to Dracula. Could it be possible that the royal family has ties to the fictional vampire Dracula? The Prince of Wales may own several properties in Transylvania, but could he love the area so much because he's related to Vlad the Impaler's bloodline? By following Prince Charles's bloodline, it turns out he is connected to Vlad through his great-grandmother, Queen Mary, wife of George V, who was born a German princess. Vlad became the inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. He was known for his cruel treatment by impaling his enemies on stakes in the ground and leaving them to die. In a book titled The British Chronicles, author David Hughes has compiled a family tree that offers 4 different variants that show how the family blood of Vlad the Impaler was transmitted through 2 of his sons directly to Prince Charles. A great-great-grandmother of Prince Charles's mother, Queen Elizabeth II, Hungarian Countess Claudia Reddy, was also born and raised in Transylvania in the 19th century. But there is more than just DNA connecting Prince Charles to Dracula. There is a disease known as porphyria, or iron deficiency, that makes the skin sensitive to light, in the same way vampires avoid the sun. The disease is present among many of the royal family, Prince Charles included. Could these facts be why Prince Charles is so fond of Romania? He owns several properties in Transylvania's countryside and even does charity work, as well as working to improve their ecological agriculture and conservation of Romanian culture. If you want to see for yourself how Prince Charles has ties to Dracula, you can visit one of his properties in Transylvania in the village of Viskri, with its pastel-colored houses and fortified church from the 13th century, the oldest of Transylvania. Number 4. Aliens built Stonehenge. Could one of the most well-known megalithic monuments have been built by aliens? Some people believe that the rocks at Stonehenge were in place millions of years before humans even existed. As archaeologists used new techniques to study the stones that created the ancient site, they performed radiocarbon dating on campfires from millennia ago, helping them to determine that the holes cut into the stones were made centuries before Stonehenge was built. Stonehenge was created in 2900 BC, but the holes in the rocky outcrops where the stones were taken from to build the site dated between 3400 and 3200 BC, because some of the biggest stones at Stonehenge weighed up to 50 tons, and there are no written records to show how it was built. Some people believe it had to have been built by an elevated race, similar to theories about the Egyptian pyramids and the Maori heads at Easter Island. Some believe that aliens came to Earth and built the ancient megastructure. People who believe in ancient aliens think that extraterrestrials with superior knowledge of science and engineering shared their expertise with earlier civilizations to help them build architectural wonders, including Stonehenge. Those who believe in this theory think that the stone circle at Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain was a launching pad for spaceships, or maybe even an observatory for extraterrestrial activity in the skies. The wheel hadn't been invented at the time Stonehenge was built. Adding to the conspiracy theory, even if you don't believe aliens helped the Neolithic people of England build a monument, you have to agree that it's a massive feat of construction, one that seems far more advanced than the time period in which it was built. Number 3. The Betz Sphere. In 1974, a Florida man found a mysterious sphere, a little smaller than a bowling ball, near their home that weighed a solid 22 pounds. It was fate that the Betz family found the sphere, which only appeared after a fire destroyed part of their property. It was originally thought to be a historic cannonball from Florida's Renaissance Spanish colonizer, but the metal sphere was not corroded. It was made from shiny metal or steel, something that did not exist during Spanish colonial times. After studying the sphere more closely, the family noticed something very strange. It started to move on its own, rolling, making noises, and vibrating. The family dog even noticed the bizarre movements. When she sat next to it and it started moving, she would start to whimper and cover her ears with her paws. Theories about the sphere and its strange properties were further suspected to be due to solar radiations, with the family noticing how it moved more intensely when the sun was closer and brighter. As more rumors started to spread about the sphere, the US military decided to analyze it, and the results were surprising. An expert from a research firm determined that he heard radio waves coming from inside the sphere, and that it had a magnetic field around it. Could that be the reason why the sphere was able to move on its own? The sphere was sent to an astronomer and ufologist for examination, who determined that it was man-made. Still, the more people who heard about it, the more they believed in the sphere's otherworldly origins. It would take an examination by the US Navy to get a clearer picture. They identified that it was made from steel, comparing it to a stainless steel ball sold by a Jacksonville equipment supply company. In their catalog, the stainless steel ball measured 8 inches across and weighed over 21 pounds, exactly the same size as the Betz sphere. Taking a closer look at how the ball was able to move on its own, the simple explanation points to uneven stone floors in the Betz house that allowed it to move or change direction. Still, some wanted to believe it was made by an unknown extraterrestrial race. Even though there was a lot of hype in the 1970s about all things UFO, the sphere was never proven to be alien, but it hasn't been disproven either. Number 2. The HAARP antenna. Could a remote Alaskan facility that houses a high-frequency antenna be to blame for mind control? Scientists have been studying the base because it's home to one of the world's most powerful radio transmitters, which is why some people believe the station could be the culprit behind strange weather phenomena and powerful earthquakes. Known as the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, the HAARP facility is about 250 miles south of Fairbanks, Alaska. Some conspiracy theorists think it could be a secret weapon that controls the weather and takes over the minds of unsuspecting Americans. It's easy to see why people are wary of the facility. It stretches over a massive 33 acres with 180 large antennas. One can't help but be a little suspicious of its purpose. Could it be some sort of death ray that inflicts psychic warfare to make the general public do what they want? Not according to the scientists who work there. It was supposedly built to study the atmosphere by firing high-frequency radio waves where phenomena like the Northern Lights originate. So, why is the facility shrouded in such mystery? Maybe it's the remote location, or the fact that there are so many antennas that allow the facility to influence the natural flow of electricity, maintain satellites, and explore the farthest reaches of the globe from one location. Either way, HAARP has decided to share a few details of its powerful arsenal with visitors at an open house. But that doesn't mean they don't have other secrets just waiting to be discovered. Number 1. America's Stonehenge. With a name like Mystery Hill, it's no wonder there are a lot of theories around the origin of a strange series of stone walls, underground chambers, and rocky structures in Salem, New Hampshire. Nicknamed America's Stonehenge, the site is an archaeological wonder that no one knows the origin of. Believed to be about 4,000 years old, the site has become famous for its odd stone arrangements and puzzling, cave-like buildings on the 30 acres where it sits, 40 miles north of Boston. Even though it shares the name with England's Stonehenge, which is made up of concentric circles of giant megaliths, Mystery Hill is a confusing jumble of smaller stones that don't seem to be in any sort of pattern or design. The place is believed to have been an observatory, with some of its structures astronomically aligned to coincide with the summer solstice, which might mean it was an important place of worship to the ancient people who built it. Who those people are, though, remains a mystery to this day. The land where Mystery Hill sits passed through the hands of multiple families before a man named William Goodwin, who had an interest in collecting and studying rare objects, bought the site. Goodwin believed Irish monks who had fled the Vikings and settled in New Hampshire constructed the stone walls and underground chambers on the site. Evidence on some of the stones showed primitive stone hand tools were used to quarry the slabs, and analysis on the stones found humans had occupied the area as far back as 2000 BC. One of the more talked about features is what's known as the sacrificial stone, a massive flat stone. The stone is so large it looks like a massive table, complete with a groove carved directly into the stone that leads to a spout, which some believe may have been used to channel blood during ritual sacrifices. Along with the underground chambers, artificial caves, and hidden passages, Mystery Hill sure lives up to its name, as it continues to puzzle visitors who wonder about its origins. Native Americans living in the area at the time didn't build stone structures like this, and there were no colonial farmers until the early 1700s. The mystery of its construction and purpose, along with the reason for aligning the stones to the stars, may never be solved.
Number 10. The Chinese Mummy. Archaeologists in China recently made one of the most shocking discoveries in archaeology history. They didn't know what kind of chemical reaction they were about to let loose, but it would make even a jaded scientist's jaw drop. It happened when they uncovered an ancient burial area from 300 years ago in Hunan province. Two of the bodies buried here were nothing more than pale skeletons. However, a third was perfectly preserved, at least until something unexpected started happening. The Chinese archaeologists were baffled, claiming that when they first opened the man's coffin, his face was so fresh that it looked like he had just died yesterday. Even more bizarre was what happened in the hours following his coffin being opened. First, his face started to go black. Next, a disturbing smell started wafting from his body. In just a few hours, the perfectly preserved corpse had turned completely black, aging 300 years almost instantaneously. According to Dr. Lucas Nicol from the University of London, the coffin in which the man was buried had been covered in charcoal. The charcoal provided some type of barrier, which meant that bacteria was unable to reach the body for 300 years. But the moment air touched the man's flesh, 300 years of disintegration was activated, and the man decayed almost immediately. Number 9. Alien creatures on the beach. Thousands of creepy creatures washed up on a beach in the UK looking like tiny alien pods. It was Izzy MacArthur who first noticed the transparent creatures scattered across the shore in South Wales and shared pictures of them online. There were thousands of the things looking as if they had dropped right out of space. Izzy didn't know what to make of them, and neither did her friends online. Izzy also said that the longer she stood on the beach, the more the creepy creatures showed up. They were literally rolling in with the tide, freaking out everybody who was there to witness this bizarre phenomenon. But as it turned out, the creatures were actually sea gooseberries, not at all from space, but they are still creepy marine monsters with tentacles up to 20 times larger than their actual body. They use these tentacles to hunt prey in the ocean, things like plankton. The reason they get washed up on the beach is that they breed in the nearby waters. So during breeding season, as the tide rushes in, some of the gelatinous blobs end up on the shore. But it still doesn't mean you'd want to be swimming there when they start rolling in. Number 8. Haunted House. In South Carolina, a group of friends made the creepiest discovery of their lifetime. It happened when they went to check out an abandoned house that the locals claimed was haunted. The group got on their off-road vehicles, drove out into the rural area where the house was, and began to poke around inside. Instead of ghosts, they found a literal dead body. The corpse was decomposing inside an old freezer. According to Madison Childers, one of the friends who found the body, it was a very scary experience. At first, she couldn't even tell if it was a person because it had been there for months. The corpse had maggots writhing all over it, with an unbearable smell wafting up into their noses. As of right now, the authorities have no idea whose body this is. And to make things a little more mysterious, after the news broke, the abandoned house was burned down just days later. Could foul play have been involved? Could the dead body belong to someone who was a victim of a crime and the perpetrator came back to burn the house down to destroy the evidence of their crime? We may never know. Number 7. Ghost Ship. Over a century ago, one of the creepiest discoveries in history was made in the Outer Banks, North Carolina. It was August of 1921 when the ship of the Carroll A. Deering was discovered run aground on the treacherous rocks along the North Carolina coast. The ship itself wasn't all that creepy, but the fact that the crew had vanished into thin air and nobody knew what happened to them made this one of the most unsettling nautical mysteries ever. Just months before, the ship had set sail from Virginia in excellent condition. The captain was experienced, the crew all knew what they were doing, and they were bound for Rio de Janeiro with a hull full of coal. The ship delivered its cargo without any hiccups and headed back to the US. Sometime after leaving Brazil, something went terribly wrong. When the ship was finally discovered, the crew was nowhere to be found. Their personal belongings were gone, navigational equipment was missing, and the only living being still on the ship was a cat. To this day, nobody knows what happened to the crew of the Carroll A. Deering, and it remains one of the creepiest shipwrecks ever discovered. What do you think happened to them? Tell us your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Creepy Robot Portrait. Something beyond creepy was recently unveiled at an art exhibition in London. While not exactly a discovery, it's definitely newsworthy. You see, the thing that was revealed in London was a painting, an extremely creepy one. The reason it's so disturbing is that the painting is a self-portrait painted by a machine. That's right, a literal robot with artificial intelligence has made self-portraits that are the first of their kind, which is something straight out of a science fiction movie. The android artist's name is Ida, and she's powered by the most advanced artificial intelligence software to date. She can blink, she can talk, and she can paint disturbing portraits. She was programmed by a team of experts from the University of Oxford and the University of Leeds. It took them 2 years to get her painting, and she's even given her own TEDx talk. This may not seem like an end-of-the-world scenario, but if robots have already begun to paint portraits of themselves, it's probably only a matter of time before they rise up and enslave humanity. Or not, let's hope not. How do you feel about robots painting their own portraits? Is this the first step to a robotic takeover of the human race? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Number 5. Smiling Worm. A Russian fisherman has pulled out a smiling worm out of the ocean. It's one of the creepiest things you'll probably see today. The fisherman's name is Roman Fyodortsov, and he found the worm in a deep part of the ocean that receives almost no sunlight. At first glance, it looks as though the worm is showing off a great big grin. It even has spots that look like its eyes and nose. However, the worm was not actually smiling. According to Mark Siddall from the Museum of Natural History in New York, that wasn't even its face. It was only the camera angle that made it look so smiley. The truth is that the creature is a type of bristleworm that lives in the coldest parts of the ocean and has survived the last 5 major extinction events on our planet. It's still creepy, but smiling is the last thing it probably feels like doing. Would you want this worm for an extremely unique and rather creepy pet? I think it looks kind of adorable, personally. Number 4. Creepy Ancient Mask. A creepy ancient mask that dates back 9,000 years has caused some archaeologists to raise their eyebrows. The disturbing mask has vacant eyes, a toothy expression, and is one of only 15 such masks ever discovered. It was found a handful of months ago by archaeology authorities in Israel. The creepy mask was actually seized by the Theft Prevention Unit, and because of this, the experts have no idea where it was originally found. It was probably built by prehistoric people living in what is today Israel, though the exact archaeological site is unknown. At this point, you're probably wondering why prehistoric people needed a creepy mask made out of stone. The researchers don't actually know what it was used for. They did find holes along its sides that may have been for securing it to a person's face. But beyond that, the mask is a total enigma. Number 3. Ancient Burials. A series of creepy burials from 4,000 years ago was just found at an archaeological site in China. The burials were part of an old settlement built by a Neolithic civilization that has no name. Chinese archaeologists believe the burials could be the earliest of their kind anywhere in the country. Other than the rotting corpses found inside the burial plots, archaeologists also uncovered earthenware objects with ritualistic characters inscribed upon them. The suggestion here is that the creepy graves may have been part of a ritual activity during the Xia dynasty sometime between 2070 and 1600 BC. Seeing as these graves are ancient, archaeologists don't know much about them, why they were made, or what kind of rituals were involved. At least 50 tombs were found there, along with mysterious pits filled with grave goods and artifacts. The whole place is a mystery, but archaeologists are hoping that with more excavations, they can get to the bottom of the creepy burials. Number 2. The Inca Maiden Mummy. We all know about ancient civilizations that believed in human sacrifice in order to appease the deities of cultures that are long gone now. 500 years ago, a young Incan girl who is only 15 years old was a victim and was sacrificed. She was originally discovered in 1999 at the very top of a volcano in Argentina. The volcano is called Yuyayaco, and its peak is 22,100 feet above sea level. The girl, who was quickly nicknamed the Maiden, was likely used in a ceremonial ritual of great importance. Researchers don't know why she needed to be sacrificed, along with a 7-year-old boy and 6-year-old girl found with her. But since the Inca took her all the way to the top of the volcano, it must have been serious. After her discovery, researchers started looking at her body. She was extremely well preserved thanks to the frozen temperatures at the top of the volcano, so they were able to get a lot of information. They discovered that she'd been fattened up before the sacrifice, fed a royal diet of maize and llama meat. She was also suffering from a bacterial lung infection at the time of her sacrifice, though the experts honestly have no idea if the Inca even knew about it. As you could probably guess, they didn't have advanced medical machines to determine the root cause of many illnesses. Even all these years later, the Maiden is one of the eeriest, creepiest, and most mysterious mummies ever found in the world. Number 1. Switchblade Fish. The creepiest fish in the world has switchblades in its face. And yes, it's absolutely terrifying. The fish, known as a stonefish, is also so incredibly dangerous that it could kill you with a single jab of the spines growing out of its back. The spines on its back have such potent venom that a single jab can kill a fully grown man in minutes. But other than just being venomous, ugly, and beyond creepy, the fish has switchblades in its face too. The bizarre discovery was recently made by scientists who refer to the switchblades as lacrimal sabers. The blades are located just under the eyes of the fish, almost like an extremely dangerous mustache. Researcher William Leo Smith says the switchblades are literally embedded in the skull of the stonefish. What makes the blades so unique is that they're able to rotate 90 degrees. In other words, the fish can actually rotate the spiky blades in whatever direction it chooses, warding off any potential predators by swimming at them with a pair of knives pointing from its head. When the fish doesn't need to use the switchblades, it keeps them pressed firmly against its head. It really makes you wonder just how many defense mechanisms the stonefish needs. The creepy critter has some of the most potent venom in the world, and it has switchblades attached to its skull. If you ask me, it really seems like overkill for a tiny fish. Which of these weird discoveries creeped you out the most?
Number 10. UFO Crash Site. A man exploring a bit of forest in the United Kingdom apparently came across the crash site of a UFO. He shared pictures of his disturbing discovery after returning home, and while the photos don't exactly prove a UFO landed in the forest, it's hard to see what else could have caused such devastation. Here's what happened. Ben Landercrum from Plymouth stumbled upon a strange area of completely flattened trees in the middle of the woods while taking his dog for a stroll. According to Ben, there was no immediate clue as to why the patch of forest had literally been flattened, with the trees pulled down, snapped at the top, and mangled as if a great flying saucer had made an emergency landing right there in the woods. Obviously, something huge had come crashing down from the sky. However, if it was an alien ship, the ship was long gone by the time Ben got there. To make this story even more bizarre, Ben said that as he was taking the pictures of the crushed trees, he began to feel as if someone was watching him and his dog. He also heard a bunch of weird sounds coming from deeper in the trees, so he turned around and ran back to his camper. We'll probably never know what landed here in the forest, but anyone with eyes and a bit of an imagination can clearly come to the conclusion it was most likely aliens. Number 9. The best Bigfoot sighting ever. Do you believe in Bigfoot? Strange footage of a mysterious black figure lurking behind the trees in the middle of the woods has been called the best Bigfoot sighting ever. It was a guy named Josh Highcliffe who discovered the creature while he was on a hunting trip. He managed to pull his phone out just in the nick of time to get a bit of video evidence. Whatever he saw, it sure looked a lot like the legendary Bigfoot. It was completely covered in black hair, at least 6 or 7 feet tall. It was rummaging through some of the brush. Unfortunately, we don't know much more than that, because the cameraman got frightened, turned and ran for his life. Nothing was chasing him, but he didn't want to stick around and give it a chance if it suddenly decided to. Josh explained in the video that the Bigfoot creature was crouching by a dead cypress tree, about 50 yards from him. At first, he thought it was just a hog, or maybe even a black bear. He froze where he was and started filming. When the creature stood up, Highcliffe knew immediately that it was not a hog or a bear. It definitely looked like some kind of giant hairy ape monster. He got scared and took off. It's hard to confirm that this was indeed Bigfoot, but the video evidence is definitely some of the best proof that we've gotten in the last few years. What would you have done if you were in that situation? Do you think you would continue filming or flee the scene? Number 8. Cabin in the woods. A man in Norway was roaming through a rural forest when he came upon something out of a horror movie. It turned out to be the scariest discovery he would ever make in his life. A completely abandoned cabin in the middle of the woods. When he stumbled out of the trees and realized that he was standing in front of a cabin that looked like it belonged in a Blair Witch movie, he worked up the courage to actually go inside and check it out. What he found inside was just terrible. There weren't any dead bodies or rotten corpses, but it was definitely abandoned. Whoever had lived in the secluded cabin had left behind almost all their belongings. There were family photos, interesting trinkets, and even clothes strewn across the floor. The kitchen was a mess. There were random personal objects on every surface, and the place looked like a hoarder's paradise. Unfortunately, the man never did learn who had been living in the cabin or why they abandoned it so abruptly. After a bit of peeking around, his good senses finally got the better of him, and he decided to hightail it out of there. What would you do if you found a creepy cabin like this in the forest? Would you go inside and check it out, or run for your life? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to quickly hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. Skull in the woods. Police in Delaware have finally linked the mysterious human skull found in the woods behind a shopping center to a woman who had vanished without a trace in 2013. Imagine the surprise of the construction workers who went into the woods to excavate for a new building project to discover not an entire skull, but a fragment of a human skull. The workers who found the grisly remains quickly handed it over to the police, who had the Delaware Division of Forensic Sciences test it out. Nobody could tell if it was the skull of a murder victim or if it had archaeological value, but as it turned out, it was indeed a murder victim. Forensic scientists were able to identify the skull as belonging to Nancy Nicole Shipley, who was reported missing way back in April of 2013, over 8 years ago. No cause of death has been determined, and no additional bones have been found yet, meaning this cold case isn't getting any warmer. And considering only a single piece of her skull was found in the woods, her demise was likely rather unpleasant. Who knows where the rest of her ended up? Number 6. The Forest of Dead Dolls. A woman was left speechless and in shock after she came across a disturbing collection of dolls in the middle of the woods. This happened in a remote forest in England, in the region of Staffordshire. The woman, who refused to give her name, was on a coronavirus lockdown stroll when she made the bizarre discovery. Because this was during the lockdown, it wasn't as if there were other people around to make the dolls less creepy, or to explain why they were there in the first place. It was just her and a dozen or more freaky dolls nailed to the trees. Some were tied to the trees with rope, but most had simply been nailed in place. The woman didn't really know what to do. All of a sudden, she realized she was standing in the middle of what looked like some kind of ritual playground, with dead dolls fixed to the trees as far as she could see in all directions. Plus, someone had dressed up the dolls in creepy dresses, all of them exactly the same. She took some pictures and then ran for her life. To this day, nobody has any idea who put the dolls in the tree, if it was just a prank or something more sinister. Why do you think these dolls were there? Number 5. The Tunnel of Death. A terrifying tunnel of death from the First World War was recently discovered in a lush French forest. The tunnel was found by Elaine and Pierre Malinowski, who had been actually looking for it since the 1990s. The tunnel was used by German soldiers in May of 1917, and there were approximately 270 Germans inside the tunnel, which stretched about 1,000 feet underground. French infantry bombed the area, and the entrance to the tunnel was sealed. Sadly, all 270 German soldiers suffocated and died. Since the soldiers weren't French, the government never really tried to find their bodies. The tunnel was sealed. The bodies were trapped in the earth, and that seemed good enough for everybody. But now, the death tunnel has finally been revealed. Nobody had known the exact place of the tunnel, only the story behind it. After ripping through a rural forest with a bulldozer, the father-son duo of amateur archaeologists finally stumbled upon gas canisters, rifles, and, yes, the corpses of all 270 German soldiers who had suffocated in the collapsed tunnel. Number 4. The oldest forest in the world. In New York, specifically in Cairo, New York, the oldest forest in the entire world has just been discovered. This brings a whole new meaning to mysterious things found in the woods, right? Researchers never expected they would find fossil evidence of a forest over 386 million years old in the Big Apple. Obviously, New York is the last place people would expect the oldest forest on the planet to be, but that doesn't stop it from being true. Researchers say this forest is only a few million years older than the previous oldest forest, which, surprise surprise, is also in New York. But how do the experts even know a forest once grew and thrived here? They discovered fossils of root systems dating back to the Devonian period. This was basically when plant life started to evolve. It was soon after that the Carboniferous period came about, a time when forests dominated the land. Trees grew to enormous sizes, and the atmospheric oxygen increased from 21% to 35%. This huge burst in oxygen resulted in insects the size of elephants and dragonflies the size of eagles. Number 3. Louisiana duck blind. In Louisiana, there is a floating man cave in the middle of the woods, like you wouldn't believe. It's actually located in the middle of the bayou, and nobody knows who built the thing. A couple of hunters stumbled onto it and uploaded the pictures online. They were shocked to discover the biggest duck blind probably ever built. This thing has 3 stories, with the first level big enough for 4 boats underneath. The second level has a fully equipped kitchen, including a fridge, a pair of stoves, and a living room with 2 couches and a TV. There are even theater seats that can fit 14 comfortably. There's a side porch with a running toilet, a grill for cooking up lunch, and a bar to whip together some margaritas. Oh yeah, and there's a margarita machine hardwired to a couple of car batteries. On the 3rd level of the duck blind is a crow's nest with room for 3 people, situated 25 feet in the trees. Whoever built this bayou mansion put a whole lot of effort into it. It's just too bad we don't know who the masterminds behind this project are. Would you and your buddies like to stay in a place like this during hunting season? Number 2. Jars of the dead. In a remote forest, archaeologists have uncovered an extremely creepy graveyard that goes back over 1,000 years. The graveyard is filled with old stone jars, which were used like coffins to bury people inside of. Corpses were literally bent and folded, then stuffed into the jars and simply left to rot. The jars of the dead were found in the Southeast Asian country of Laos. Now, you may have heard of this place before, but this is actually a new discovery. There are at least 15 sites in Laos that have stone burial jars. The one we're talking about right now was just recently found by archaeologists with the Australian National University, quite far away from the main jar sites. 137 new jars were uncovered in a secluded woodland, never before seen by researchers. Unfortunately, the experts still don't really know why these jars of death were ever used, or who it was stuffed inside them. The only thing this news discovery has taught archaeologists is that the practice was more widespread than previously thought. Number 1. Alabama Tavern. Archaeologists recently discovered a trove of interesting artifacts from an Alabama tavern in the woods. They unearthed pieces of pottery, nails, and shards of glass from a secluded inn and tavern that played a surprising role in the Civil War. Some of the artifacts go back to before Alabama became the 22nd state of America in 1819. The team that made the interesting discoveries is from the University of Alabama, and they found all these incredible artifacts by digging on the grounds of what is today the Pope's Tavern Museum. It's a local history museum that was once used by both the Union forces and the Confederate forces. During the Civil War, it had been a hospital and command center for both sides. But other than just a few scraps of glass left behind by settlers hundreds of years ago, the archaeologists also found some cool Civil War artifacts buried in the dirt, such as a rare Kennedy long rifle and a colonel's uniform from the Confederate side. What's the craziest thing you ever found in the woods? Number 10. Ocean Giants. In 2017, footage was recorded that showed that a diver was in control of a remotely operated vehicle when he discovered one of the greatest mysteries of the ocean ever. At the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, sitting over 2,500 feet below sea level, he found the skeleton of an unidentified beast estimated at over 100 feet in length. The giant skeleton seems to be the remains of a mythical sea serpent. Not a single scientist has been able to identify the preposterously large skeleton, with most admitting it's nothing like anything that's ever been found before. The skeleton was spotted in the middle of a vast undersea community of tiny animals like crabs and shellfish. The man operating the underwater vehicle filmed what looked to be a spinal column lying in the muck at the bottom of the sea. The column is attached to some larger bones, but it's impossible to tell what they look like because it's so murky down there. The diver tried to use the claw mechanism on the craft to lift up one of the bones, but it crumbled to dust the moment it was touched by the metal. The problem now is that the skeleton can't be transported to the surface because it will literally disintegrate. There's no way to properly document it, to know how long the skeleton has been down there, or to find out just what kind of mysterious beast it once belonged to. Some speculate that it is the skeleton of a sea serpent, or perhaps a dinosaur from millions of years ago. That seems far-fetched, but no scientific explanation has solved this mystery so far. Number 9. The Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle is without a doubt the most mysterious place in the ocean. At least, that is when it comes to missing vehicles and unidentified flying objects. According to legend, supernatural phenomena have been occurring here for centuries. There are stories of cancer patients being resurrected in the waters of the Bermuda Triangle, of strange underwater pyramids, and of ships and airplanes vanishing into thin air. But how much truth is there to the legend? Yes, over 50 ships and at least 20 aircraft have disappeared from the Bermuda Triangle. However, nobody has actually been resurrected. One of the most famous cases of mysterious vanishing was in December of 1945, when the US Navy's Flight 19 group, composed of 5 torpedo bombers, disappeared without a trace while passing through this area of the ocean. The weather got too bad, the plane pilots got disoriented, and the planes lost contact with the command center. The airplanes went down somewhere east of Florida. The military dispatched rescue, but even to this day, the wreckage has never been confirmed as found. Number 8. Cape Cod Sea Serpent. Something terrifying was recently spotted off the coast of Cape Cod. A potential sea serpent almost 1,000 feet long. People are always speculating about giant sea monsters living in our oceans, but it's rare to ever actually find one. The photograph of the sea monster was taken by an aerial photographer named Wayne Davis. He was flying over the Atlantic Ocean near the Nauset Beach dunes when he saw the shadow of the beast and snapped a few quick pics of it. He had never seen anything like it in his life, though he did admit it kind of reminded him of a Chinese dragon. It was extraordinarily long. It seemed to have a tail much longer than its body, and it moved through the ocean like a snake. The big problem now is trying to figure out what the creature really was. Could it have been a truly gigantic sea beast that scientists don't know about? Or on the other hand, was it simply a shadow on the water that looked like a sea monster? Skeptics say one thing, true believers say something else, and the truth is hard to pin down. Number 7. The Mariana Trench. The Mariana Trench is the deepest place in the world. It's located just off the coast of Guam, known to be one of the most unique environments on the planet. It goes down to a depth of over 36,000 feet, hosting some very bizarre sea creatures at the very bottom. The creatures who live at the bottom of the trench have adapted to living at pressures over 1,000 times more than what we experience on land. There are mud volcanoes, vents that spit out liquid sulfur, and who knows what else. It's true that in 2012, James Cameron descended to the bottom, or at least near the bottom, at 35,756 feet. However, he was only down there in a submarine for a handful of minutes. The Mariana Trench is over 5 times longer than the Grand Canyon. So, as you can imagine, a few minutes at the bottom in one single spot with only one dim light of the submarine to locate sea creatures, well, they didn't really discover much. The truth is that nobody really knows what's at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Sure, they found some translucent sea cucumbers, countless small organisms, and shrimp scavengers, but the true beasts of the trench have yet to be identified. What do you think lies at the bottom of the Mariana Trench? Tell me your ideas in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe if you haven't already for more amazing videos just like this one. Number 6. The ocean floor. The ocean floor itself is almost as mysterious as the Mariana Trench, and is itself almost entirely unexplored. According to the United States National Ocean Service, humans have explored less than 20% of our ocean. That means that we have over 80% of the surface totally unknown to us. That's about half of the Earth's surface that we know next to nothing about directly. Considering how many wild and unbelievable things we've already found, just try to imagine what's hiding out in these uncharted places on the sea floor. We actually know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the floor of the ocean. Recently, scientists have begun using hydrographic surveys to map the ocean floor. Still, even with the most impressive modern technology, the coastal waters of the US have only been 35% mapped. That means there is a whole world of sunken ships, sea monsters, and geological features that we know nothing about, less than a mile from the American shoreline. If you want to explore the unknown, the ocean is a great place to start. What kind of mysteries do you think are still hiding on the floor of the ocean? Are there new species there that we've never discovered? Perhaps there are treasures that remain out there, waiting to be found someday. Number 5. The underwater city of Japan. Off the coast of Ryukyu Islands in Japan, one of the most mysterious things in the ocean has been captivating divers, geologists, scientists, and alien conspiracy theorists since it was discovered in 1987. The mystery revolves around a pyramid-like formation known as the Yonaguni Monument. It was uncovered by a diver 75 feet beneath the surface of the ocean. The pyramid is roughly 150 feet long and 60 feet wide, with most estimates placing it at least 10,000 years old. Nobody knows who built it. The Japanese government won't even admit that it's a man-made formation, and some scientists have gone so far as to denounce the discovery altogether as conspiracy nonsense. But anyone who's actually dove down to look at the pyramid knows it's no joke. It clearly has steps that were carved out of massive blocks of stone. Some divers even claim to have found the ruins of what might be an ancient city. No matter which way you look at it, there is something mystifying going on off the coast of Japan, and no mainstream scientists want anything to do with it. The best guess is that the pyramid was left behind by an ancient culture, while some more harebrained theories claim it could be the ruins of Atlantis. Number 4. New sea animal. Paleontologists in Canada have discovered a new species of sea creature that looked like a football. The discovery goes to show just how mysterious life in our ocean is, and has been for the past 500 million years. This new species has been dated back 500 million years to the Cambrian period. It was identified in a piece of shale in the Kootenay National Park, up in the Canadian Rocky Mountains. But the real mystery isn't the fact that the sea fossil was found high up in the mountains, but that it was a literal giant for the time it was alive. According to Jean-Menard Caron, curator of invertebrate paleontology at the Royal Ontario Museum, the size of the creature is mind-boggling. It's one of the largest animals ever discovered from the Cambrian period. To give you a bit of a comparison, most sea creatures back then were roughly the size of your pinky finger. The football monster was almost 2 feet long, with a hard protective shell and a mouth filled with teeth. Oh, and don't forget the 2 spiky claws. It was a giant, over 10 times larger than just about every other creature. Paleontologists have no idea why the creature grew to such titanic sizes. They've since named it the Titanosaurus, and they say it's a type of ancient arthropod. But just how it came to be so big will probably remain a mystery. Number 3. The mega shark. Some people believe there is an ancient mega shark lurking in the deepest parts of the world's oceans, and it might be a leftover megalodon from millions of years ago. It's one of the most intriguing ocean mysteries of our time. The issue is that scientists say the megalodon has been extinct for at least 3 million years. So the question becomes, could a predator more than 50 feet long still be lurking in our oceans without us knowing about it? Scientists say the answer is maybe. We know that very little of the ocean has ever been explored, but still, scientists say it's unlikely for a beast of that magnitude to go unnoticed by all the scientists on the planet. That being said, there are some strange discoveries that have suggested a megashark could still be alive. In 1875, the HMS Challenger picked up a huge set of 4-inch teeth from a depth of 14,000 feet off the coast of Tahiti. Then, in 1959, those teeth were estimated at only 11,300 years old. This would mean the megalodon didn't actually go extinct when scientists thought so. But unfortunately, nobody has actually seen a megashark in modern times, nor has a dead megashark body ever washed up on shore or been pulled up from the deep in a fisherman's net. Number 2. The immortal jellyfish. There are immortal jellyfish swimming in our oceans. As crazy as it sounds, it's absolutely true. The jellyfish has a kind of Benjamin Button syndrome, where it manages to age in reverse so that it never dies. The mystery of the immortal jellyfish, if ever solved, could one day not only eradicate cancer, but maybe even keep humans living longer than ever imagined. Here's what scientists know so far about the immortal jellyfish. It's only the size of a pinky fingernail. It was discovered in the Mediterranean Sea back in the 1880s, and scientists only figured out its uncanny ability about 20 years ago. The jellyfish has a pretty boring life, for as long as it goes on. It cheats death by transforming its cells to a previous younger state. According to Maria Miglietta, a researcher from the Pennsylvania State University, it transforms its cells whenever threatened by starvation, physical harm, or some other kind of crisis. When it feels death is close, it literally changes its cellular structure so that it becomes younger. It reverts back to its original stage in jellyfish life, then grows old again. In this way, the jellyfish can theoretically grow old, turn back into a young creature, and grow old again, forever and ever. As for why humans don't do that, well, we just aren't sure. Maybe someday we'll be able to do just that. Number 1. The creature with 8 jaws. Scientists have found a monstrous creature with 8 jaws that they've dubbed an evolutionary wonder. It's called the Ophiogura, a creature that looks kind of like a starfish, but has too many mouths and too many hooks on its arms. If you've ever wondered how real Cthulhu is, just look at this thing. It's a very real monster, but its presence in the ocean is also something of a mystery. Scientists say its closest living relative is from the Jurassic period, back 180 million years before today. It's a totally new species, never before identified, and scientists have no clue as to how it's managed to live so long. They don't even know how many of them exist. Plus, they're an anomaly. This 8-jawed critter hasn't evolved even a little bit in millions of years, which is pretty much unheard of for sea creatures. What's your favorite part of our mysterious oceans? Number 10. Mysterious monster skeleton. A mysterious sea monster recently washed up on a British beach, prompting the public to ask, do sea monsters really exist? The truth is that sea monsters definitely exist. The ocean is still mostly unexplored. Scientists and fishermen are constantly finding new species. So who knows what else is lurking beneath the water, covering most of our planet? A woman named Margaret Flippins was the one who stumbled upon the skeleton of this particular unknown creature while she was strolling along her favorite beach near the city of Aberdeen. The experts can't quite figure out what the creature is, or at least what it was in life. It's been estimated at 30 feet long, and it looks more like a dangerous sea serpent than any living animal we know anything about. The best guess that scientists can come up with is that the carcass belonged to a whale. That's it, just an ordinary whale. But there's no proof of this, or indeed proof that the monster will ever be certifiably identified. Many experts have come forward to say that it's perfectly plausible for some species of shark, whale, or other beast to be living in the ocean that we don't yet know about. The beached carcass may just be one of them. Number 9. Butterfly creatures. Hordes of little sea monsters recently washed up on beaches all across Dubai. So many of them were found scattered across the local beaches that residents began to get worried. The Dubai municipality had to release a statement saying that the small monsters, which looked kind of like ocean butterflies, were completely harmless and not venomous. But even though these little creatures weren't deadly, they were extremely odd-looking. These marine animals belong to a family of sea butterflies, a subfamily of sea snails. Each one is less than a couple inches in length, with the body of the sea butterfly protected by a shell shaped like a needle. Unfortunately for them, they almost always die when they get swept onto dry sand. And even though they can't kill anyone, they do cause mild discomfort when they get stuck to people's bodies. But the biggest mystery that still hasn't been solved to this day is just why they wound up on so many beaches. They were spotted in 5 different places in huge clusters. Scientists have no idea what happened for so many of them to be washed ashore at once. Do you have any ideas? Number 8. The Sea Monster of 1884. In 1884, a 5-year-old girl named Jessamine Buck got the surprise of a lifetime when she came face to face with a sea monster while visiting a beach. Even as an old woman, the memory of the terrifying creature stayed vivid in her mind. Back in '84, Jessamine had to travel 25 miles from her home in Bucksport to the beach in Portuguese Island, where she found the creature. Going to the beach was one of her favorite summertime activities. She had gone there with her older sister many times before, and her sister was with her the day of the discovery too. The two were looking at cod shells when suddenly Jessamine noticed something huge and terrifying in the waves just beyond the shore. It had a yellow head, it was covered in whiskers, and the little girl screamed and ran away. According to her, the creature looked like a giant yellow dog swimming in the water. After she told her mother what had happened, the adults got involved and went to check out the beach. They too were shocked when they witnessed the very same creature lurking in the water just off the shoreline. Nobody had any idea what it was, and they all ran off in fear. It wasn't until later, when they read the newspaper, that they learned a sea lion had escaped from a Baltimore zoo. Either they really did meet a monster that day in 1884, or they simply saw a sea lion and didn't know what it was. Either way, it goes to show how just about anything, especially to someone who doesn't know any better, can look like a sea monster. Number 7. Mexican blob beast. An unidentified monstrosity washed up on a tourist beach in Mexico and scared the pants, or should I say shorts, off everyone in attendance. So far, the experts have no idea what the strange creature was. It just kind of appeared out of nowhere on Bonfil Beach in the city of Acapulco. Spectators gathered around and took photographs, sharing evidence of the bizarre animal on social media. The one thing all the experts agreed on was that the animal had not been dead for very long before it washed up on the beach. Yet, despite being recently dead, it seemed to be in an advanced state of decomposition. It looked like a blob, a pile of gunk roughly 12 feet in length. Even stranger is the fact that the carcass didn't seem to give off a bad smell. If it had been something like a rotting whale or shark, it definitely would have stank, and it would have been a very unforgettable stench. The mystery has still never been solved to this day. The best guesses saying the carcass belonged to a whale or a squid. But as we've come to learn, every unidentified sea monster that washes up is conveniently labeled as either a whale or a squid. Number 6. The real-life Kraken. The Kraken is a real monster. It was spotted by humans as far back as the 1100s. King Sverre of Norway even wrote the details of his encounter with the Kraken while on a sea voyage. And while it's impossible to confirm a sighting made by a Viking king over 1,000 years ago, real Kraken-like monsters have been seen in modern times. What we know of today as the giant squid is almost identical to how seafarers have been describing the Kraken for centuries, leading researchers to say that the Kraken and the giant squid are one in the same. In 1954, a giant squid was found beached near Ranheim in Norway. At the time, Professor Sven Hafthorn measured the creature at over 31 feet in length. It was the biggest specimen ever recorded. Then, in 1873, a single tentacle was found that measured 19 feet, meaning the rest of the creature was even larger. The largest squid ever measured was just about 60 feet long. Over the past 2 centuries, barely any have washed ashore. The ones that have, scientists say they were just babies. This means the adults are comparable to descriptions of the Kraken, huge sea monsters with tentacles so long they could wrap around a boat. We just don't see them in modern times because, for one reason or another, they've gone into hiding. Do you believe in the Kraken? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you like this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Toothy creature. A creepy sea monster with terrifying teeth washed up on a beach in Queensland, scaring the locals and baffling the entire internet. The discovery of the creature was made by a woman taking a leisurely stroll. She thought the monster looked like something out of a nightmare, so she took photographs of it and posted them on a local community Facebook page. People on the page identified it as either a flathead fish or an extremely poisonous stonefish. The creature had huge eyes bulging out the top of its head, with thin, very sharp teeth lining its mouth. It almost looked like it was smiling, like it had finished doing something it really shouldn't have. After quite a lot of speculation, the creature was identified as a stargazer, of which there are about 20 species in the waters around Australia. It's an incredibly venomous monster, known for burying itself in the sand and waiting to ambush smaller fish. It's lucky the woman didn't touch the stargazer, as just one prick from the spines on its back can be deadly. We all know someone that probably would have touched it. Number 4. Slimy and deadly. A guy on TikTok almost died after filming himself licking one of the most dangerous sea monsters on the planet. It's extremely lucky that he walked away from that beach with his life. He goes by the name Alexa Reed, and he discovered the deadly creature while having a relaxing day at the beach. The thing was lying in the sand, wriggling a bit as it slowly died. Wanting to impress his online fans, this guy picked it up and then licked it. Why on earth he would pick some random sea creature up that he found on a beach and lick it is beyond me. He commented on the creature's light blue color and its yucky strands of tentacles. To him, it was just another boring old jellyfish. But again, why lick it? But to the people who watched this video and knew exactly what he was handling, it was the deadly Portuguese man-o'-war, also sometimes called the floating terror. It has millions of stinging cells on its tentacles that it can use for killing fully grown humans. There are around 10,000 incidents in Australia every year from people getting stung by floating terrors, and although most of them aren't deadly encounters, as the stings are treatable if dealt with immediately, they do result in excruciating pain that lasts for at least 3 days, sometimes more. In the end, the TikToker threw the deadly creature away and continued on with his day. But he's lucky that he didn't end up spasming in the sand in unbelievable agony. Number 3. The sniper eel. In Southern California, on a beach in San Clemente, a miniature sea serpent washed up on the beach and freaked out some local divers. The monster was a sniper eel, a creature that lives anywhere from 1,000 to 13,000 feet beneath the surface of the water. These are literal sea serpents, able to grow to a maximum of 5 feet in length. This one was just a baby, about half the maximum size, but it was still freaky and disturbing. Although not technically a serpent, the sniper eel looks like a skinny underwater snake. It's a terrible predator that lives in the depths, alongside creatures like the anglerfish and other living monsters with bulbous eyes and sharp teeth. Nobody knows exactly how it floated from the dark recesses where it lived all the way to the California beach, but local experts said it was a very rare occurrence. Scientists don't even know that much about these creatures, other than some of their physical characteristics. One of the most jarring things is that the creature has hooked, backwards teeth that it uses for spearing shrimp. Number 2. Nightmare of the Deep. A spooky fish washed up on a California beach, so monstrous that the people who found it couldn't even bear to look at it. The terrifying freak is called a Pacific football fish, a creature that looks oddly similar to the nightmare anglerfish in the movie Finding Nemo. And in fact, it is a species of anglerfish, one known for lurking in deep waters, at least 3,000 feet beneath the surface. According to the Crystal Cove State Park, where the ugly fish monster was found, to see any type of anglerfish washed up on a beach is very rare. They don't know how the creature ended up on shore, but they did give some interesting facts about it. Even though the football fish has teeth like sharpened fragments of glass, its mouth is so big that it sometimes doesn't even need to chew its prey. It can open its mouth and suck in prey larger than its own body. Number 1. A rundown whale. The biggest and most incredible sea monsters that really do live in our oceans are definitely whales, and one of them was just found on a beach in San Diego. The whale, which was dead upon its discovery, is believed to have been hit by an Australian Navy ship. The huge corpse of the 58-foot behemoth washed up on Bolsa Chica State Beach. According to the beach spokesman, Kevin Purcell, an investigation was launched and the US Navy actually came to see the whale themselves. It's believed that the whale was one of 2 endangered fin whales that was struck by the Australian Navy destroyer, the HMAS Sydney, just before it docked in San Diego. The 2 whales had needed to be dislodged from the hull of the vessel. One of them, apparently, made its way to the local beach. What's really horrifying is that even though whaling is no longer a big threat to fin whales, getting run over by boats still is. This really makes you wonder, what's the real sea monster? Is it the beasts living in the ocean, or the human monsters sailing it? What's the most frightening monster you've ever heard of being found on a beach? Let us know about it in the comments.
Number 8. Corsica Roman burial jars. A group of archaeologists in Corsica, Italy, were working at the Paule de Ilerose Square when they uncovered a necropolis with 40 bodies buried underneath it. Even though the area had been excavated during the 18th century, it wasn't until a team of French archaeologists set out to locate hidden treasures under the commune of the Ileruse in 2019 that they made the discovery. Experts really only expected to find the remains of ancient buildings. Instead, they located the bodies of both children and adults. But these were no ordinary graves. Instead of being buried in a classic traditional coffin or sarcophagus, the bodies were placed inside amphora, which are tall clay jars with 2 handles and a narrow neck. In the Lower Empire, necropolises like the one found in Corsica were usually located next to a church, so it makes the discovery that much more surprising, considering the area was a popular destination for those who came to visit the square with its shady palm trees at the Riviera-style resort. This type of burial became popular in the Roman world because the demand for graves had increased, and amphora were an inexpensive way to bury the dead. But how did the ancient Romans obtain so many of these clay jars for burials? Amphora were produced from the 3rd century into the 6th century in Africa and were used to import goods such as wine, oil, or salted fish to the island. Because merchants didn't take the clay jars back with them when they returned to their point of origin, Corsica ended up having a surplus of ceramics, using them to store various items, and eventually, they also became makeshift tombs. The unique burials might seem like a gruesome way to bury the dead, but the infant mortality rate in Roman times was high, which meant that a large quantity of amphora were needed to give them proper burial. Number 7. Chimu sacrifices. Teams digging close to Peru's 3rd largest city made the gruesome discovery of the world's largest child sacrifice site. While digging near the beachside town of Trujillo, archaeologists excavated 227 young victims of the Chimu culture. Aged between 4 and 14, the children were found facing the sea, which experts think may indicate they were sacrificed to appease the El Niño phenomenon, which would have impacted the local coastline and endangered the ancient people. The bodies were found at the site of Huanchaco, which had been well known as a place where many cheeky sacrifices took place between the years 1200 and 1400. The group of ancient people believed that by placating the gods to have mercy and safeguard them from rain and floods, the Chimu people had to sacrifice their children during wet weather. Even though experts found imported artifacts including silver earrings, they also found the children's footprints had remained intact, with signs they were marched to their deaths from a massive ancient adobe site a mile from where they were buried. After carefully removing the remains, archaeologists found the telltale signs of ceremonial knife wounds on the bodies, as well as dislocated rib cages that may mean the Chimu tried to remove the children's hearts before sacrificing them. Sadly, the sacrifices didn't seem to make much of a difference. The region is still devastated by the effects of El Niño to this day, making the ritual sacrifices of so many children that much more devastating. Number 6. Kango Temple. Located near the city of Cusco, an Incan archaeological site known as the Kango Temple has been whispered about for decades. Located at the temple there is a monolith, a single block of stone cut into a defined shape. It was declared a cultural heritage site by the National Institute of Culture in Peru. The secret to the design of the monolith can be found in the temple's name, which means labyrinth. Because the Inca left no written records, researchers had to guess why the stone at the Kango Temple was cut into a zigzag shape. And as researchers continued to study the site, they determined the giant stone labyrinth may have been used to carry liquid. But the type of liquid still remains a mystery. Some believe it could have been used for holy water or maybe even corn beer made by the Inca. A more gruesome theory is that the Kango used the labyrinth during blood sacrifices, allowing the blood to transfer down the tiny canals during death rituals performed by the ancient people of Cusco. Located about 3 miles from Cusco, around 12,000 feet above sea level, the monolith's ceremonial purpose becomes even more plausible when you consider the fact that the dead might have been judged at the site, with some even embalmed in the many chambers and tunnels found in the temple. Experts believe one of the interior niches of the structure may have been used as an amphitheater where the ancient Inca may have gathered to witness sacrifices to either the moon or the sun, two planets worshipped by the Inca at the time. Although experts have not confirmed that the monolith at Kango was used for sacrifices, much of the evidence points to that as the purpose of the site. Without any written records, researchers continue to guess at the purpose of the site and whether it was for ritualistic purposes or simply an area where the ancient Inca gathered. What do you think this labyrinth-like shape was used for? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you like this video, click the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Temple People of Malta. A group of people from Malta, known as the Temple People, have been the subject of study for centuries. As archaeologists continue to excavate the burial complexes they left behind, they are trying to piece together the mystery of why these people survived for so long, only to suddenly vanish. During the excavations, researchers discovered evidence that the settlers from Sicily arrived in the area, bringing goats, cows, sheep, and crops to develop their villages. Objects left behind by these ancient people included phallic shapes and fertile figurines as symbols of sensuality. They also developed an obsession with building temples, some of which ended up surviving long enough to become the oldest freestanding stone structures in the world. They erected more than 30 temple complexes over their 1100-year history, including intricate burial complexes where lavish rituals of animal sacrifice were undertaken. The Temple People were also known for their elaborate artwork, including hundreds of statues of fertile, quote-unquote, fat ladies among the rich cultural artworks left behind. One of the underground burial complexes, known as the Shara Stone Circle, is estimated to have housed between 6,000 and 7,000 individuals in its heyday circle, and took over a decade for experts to study. While excavating the burial practices of the Temple People, experts discovered that they often buried their dead deep inside natural caves where they lived, with the bones of one generation placed on top of the others. As the culture developed, the burial complexes were modified by being extended and divided into rooms for additional burials. Later, large pits that housed hundreds of individuals whose bones were separated, stored, and stacked on top of one another became a strange new way for the Temple People to bury their dead. One of the most striking revelations came when experts discovered a grave pit that housed only male body parts. There were no grave gifts left in the pit, leading experts to believe the society was more of a matriarchal one with women ruling over men. With such a rich culture of art, sculpture, and unique burial rituals, we can't help but wonder why the temple people had such a rich cultural history only to eventually vanish. Some experts believe that their remote island environment, along with their reliance on trading with other cultures for goods, may have been their ultimate downfall. What do you think? Number 4. Lost Iraqi Temple. Experts working in the Kurdistan region of northern Iraq were surprised to find life-size human statues and the column bases of a long-lost temple built to a supreme god. Dating back over 2,500 years to the Iron Age, the temple ruins were found with inscriptions that referred to the city of Musasir, who ruled the region at the time in what was nicknamed the City of the Raven. Inscriptions also reference Haldi, who was the supreme god of the kingdom and who the temple was built for. A carving at the site showed the ancient city looking very much like modern Iraqi homes, with their doorways on the ground floor, which was used as a stable and storage area. As archaeologists continued to excavate around the long-lost temple, they found a number of life-size human statues standing up to 7.5 feet tall. They were made from limestone or sandstone, depicting bearded males, some of whom held daggers in their hands. The statues were originally erected above burials, which experts hope might eventually help them to locate burial crypts where the Iraqis were believed to bury their chieftains. Other interesting finds at the location include bronze statuettes and cuneiform inscription that researchers are continuing to study. They hope to learn more about the holy city founded in bedrock during the Iron Age, a time when the Urartians, Assyrians, and Scythians fought over what is now northern Iraq. Number 3. Ancient Buddhist Temple. Could an ancient Buddhist temple discovered in Bangladesh belong to a mysterious saint? An archaeological team of Bangladeshi and Chinese experts worked together to uncover a 1,000-year-old temple in India that was dedicated to Atish Dipankar, who was a Buddhist master, scholar, and philosopher. Experts believe the temple was discovered where the saint was worshipped before he traveled to Tibet. The temple was located in an area that was busy and prosperous during the time Atish Dipankar taught there. Researchers unearthed a number of samples from what they believe is one of the oldest archaeological sites in India during a 50-day excavation. Pits filled with ash and pottery will help them with radiocarbon dating, while the discovery of the remnants of 2 roads and a 9.8-foot tall wall showed they were once part of a wealthier area. Another remarkable discovery made at the site were a series of stupa, which were spiritual sites that contained relics of the Buddhist faith. The stupa complexes contained burial mounds built between the 10th and 11th century. Previously, archaeologists discovered a mound in the shape of an octagon that was very similar to larger octagon-shaped mounds located in previous digs. A rare memorial chamber in the center of the mound was a significant discovery, one that was important to Buddhist disciples as a place to practice their religion. As archaeologists continue to excavate and preserve these historical treasures, including the first protective wall built over the entire settlement, the State Minister for Cultural Affairs hopes to develop the area as a tourist spot to share the important historical discoveries. Number 2. Mayan Ritual Caves. When archaeologists went diving in a Mayan cave that had been untouched for 1,000 years, they were stunned by what they found. A cache of ritual vessels were found inside the Jaguar God Cave in Yucatan, and researchers believe they may hold clues to the rise and fall of the Mayan Empire. The discovery was made beneath the ancient Mayan city of Chichen Itza, where a treasure trove of more than 150 ritual objects were located. The cave system known as the Jaguar God was originally discovered in 1966 by an archaeologist who wrote up a report saying that he had found an extensive amount of archaeological material inside. But instead of excavating the site, he had the entrance sealed, and soon after, records of the discovery vanished. More than 50 years later, a group from the National Geographic, explorers who are researching the water table beneath Chichen Itza, rediscovered the hidden cave system. Investigators had to get creative to reach the site by crawling on their stomach through the tight tunnels for hours to reach the underground caverns. When they did, their efforts were rewarded with well-preserved offerings by the ancient residents of Chichen Itza, including incense burners, vases, decorated plates, and other objects found surrounded by stalagmites that had formed around them. Many of the objects were emblazoned with the face of the rain god Tlaloc, as well as the sacred tree that was a representation of the Maya universe. Caves and cenotes were considered an opening to the underworld and were highly sacred spaces for the Maya. The fact that they were in such a difficult location and the number of artifacts found points to the importance of the site. Number 1. Orkney Island Spheres. Two 5,500-year-old polished stone spheres, the size of a baseball, were discovered in an ancient tomb north of mainland Scotland in the Orkney Islands. The balls vary in their design, with some ornately carved and others studded with projections. Some have also been found that are smoothly polished without any carvings or other distinctive features. The strange thing is, hundreds of similar stone balls have also been found in Neolithic sites in Scotland, England, Ireland, and Norway. Originally, they were believed to be used as weapons, though some believe they were used with ropes and lobbed at enemies for protection. But as archaeologists continue to study these strange stone balls, opinions have changed, with some thinking they were made to signify a person's status in their community or to commemorate an important part of their life. Although they may seem like simple objects, it would have taken a long time to polish the stone with water and another smaller stone to smooth the surface. Normally, the balls have been found separately, but this time, they were discovered in the corners of two different underground compartments where human remains were buried, along with their objects like pottery. Interestingly, cremated human bones were found near the entrances to the Orkney Island tomb. Is it possible the ancient people of the island used these knives to separate the flesh from the bones of the dead who are buried there? Archaeologists still don't know the answer and continue to study the objects to determine their usage. But it's a race against time, as the tomb, located near the coast, is vulnerable to storms, forcing researchers to work as quickly as possible to remove all the objects for study. At the time the tomb was created, the Neolithic settlement would have been about 1 mile further from the coast than it is now. Experts will now conduct analysis of the data gathered to the excavations in the hopes of providing more information about the Neolithic people and why they buried these stone spheres with their dead. Thanks for watching. Which one of these mysterious archaeological discoveries fascinated you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like these. See you next time.